Outlet Liquor is your place to buy a case. Stock up and save when you shop the lowest prices available every day at Outlet Liquor. You never have to wait for a sale. The more you buy, the more you save. Only at Outlet Liquor.
What's your outlet?
Welcome, everybody, to episode 135 of Two Goalies, One Mic, brought to you by Outlet Liquor, the place to buy a case on George Urban Boulevard. Sorry for a little bit of a late start. My co-host was having some tech issues, but we are here and we are ready. So better late than never, right?
It's the middle of summer. I don't know how you expect me to be in like mid-season form right now.
Yeah, none of us are in mid-season form, man. I'm an absolute train wreck right now. But yeah, I mean, obviously not a ton to talk about right now. Still waiting on Darlene and Power extensions. I mean, I think we're on the cusp of that. You know, hopefully soon. I know here in Buffalo, people are really focused on Bill's, post-training camp. Who's going to be on this final roster once cuts are made. Isabella's shining. So not much going on in the hockey scene here other than one of the most miraculous saves you've ever seen right here.
Somehow I knew you were going to lead the show with this. My question.
Just one more time because I don't really feel like it's appreciated.
I have two questions. Number one, how do you get the video quality so good?
It's just from the cameras at
Is it Live Barn or no? They have their own cameras.
It's just their own cameras.
What? And it said there was 0.0 seconds left in the period. What was the score? And like,
that was I don't know why the scoreboard says that. It must be just on every video. Right at that point, it was 3-1, and we had just got done killing the first of two penalties. We were shorthanded by
3-1 your team.
Yeah, 3-1 us.
And
we
then
won 3-2.
How much time was left in the game?
That was with 3 minutes left in the second period.
Okay, that's amazing. This is actually going to be funny. I forgot about this because I've tried to remove it from my brain, but I have a very controversial beer league hockey story that I think a lot of people could relate to, and I would like to hear people's opinions on it. So this past Thursday, my team gets into the playoffs. We win 4 straight games to get into our beer league hockey playoffs. There's 6 teams out of 10 that make it. First 2 teams get a bye. So I think it was the 4th seed versus the 5th seed in the first round of the playoffs. We win the game 4-3. It was a contentious hockey game. I played really well. Didn't stand on my head by any means, but we won the game, and it was against a team that's been in this league for 15, 20 years. Bunch of older guys, but you could tell that they were very upset about it. I get a call. This was last Thursday night. I get a call last Friday from my captain, and he says that the league is potentially going to make us forfeit because the other team went through our box scores from the entire season and searched through every single game and found out that one of our players only played 4 regular season games instead of 5. And you need 5 to be qualified for the playoff roster. So we counter back to the league saying, if he'd only played 4 games, how was he eligible to even play in that game? How was he on the playoff roster? And that guy countered with, stop trying to deflect blame. This is on you guys. And you've no one to blame but yourselves.
So the guy talking to you is the guy who runs the league?
Runs the league, yeah. So we go, all right, so I'm going to check with other teams here. Have you had playoff rosters before? We check with the team that we're supposed to play in the next round. They said, yeah, that's insane. We've had playoff rosters before. He shouldn't have been allowed to play. They talk about like the other team, like I can't believe they actually did that. They went through your box scores. I text the captain of the other team and he says, well, we don't want to move on by forfeit, but if it has to be that way, then it is what it is. And I'm like,
clearly they do because they went through all the boxes.
I was just like, you're an absolute coward. This is embarrassing. I can't believe you actually did this. And then I go back through our text chain, and he'd asked me to sub 5 times for his team that season. And the games tonight, before he plays tonight, I'm going to say, lose my number, never text me again to sub for your team. So eventually, like we go through all these things for 3+ days, and we agree on potentially like replaying the game without that player because he's not a consequential member of our team by any means. He only played 4 regular season games. But eventually nothing happened, and the league told us to go fuck ourselves, and we're out of the playoffs. We forfeited. So it's
what a bunch of
cowards, right? Isn't that
dude? Like,
isn't that one of the more embarrassing things?
League, like, you know what it is too. The league is taking their side because they've been in the league for as long as they have.
Yeah, no,
they're all probably buddy.
Knows the guy.
Like, what the fuck? Like,
we all considered going to the rink tonight and just absolutely going off on the team, like sitting in the crowd, just booing them the entire time.
Yeah,
but we're not going to do that. But it's probably something that like a lot of people can relate to because
you should honestly, you should get like, what is it? How do you, how many? Get 6 of you and just go shirtless and write frauds.
Yeah,
on your
or
chest
like, just like anything.
And stand behind their bench.
Like every other team in the league knows about this now, so they're just going to be like disemboweled and chirp relentlessly for it. But like at the end of the day, like we're all out there to have fun, and they legitimately went through every single thing. They even called the league to make sure that he only checked in 4 times instead of 5 times. Like they went out of their way to advance in the playoffs by forfeit after losing to us fair and square.
And like you said, it wasn't like it was a player that made or break you.
No, he scored a goal.
It's one thing if it's a guy that you've never seen before shows up and he just absolutely lights you up.
It's a guy that used to play for that team, now plays for our team, and got in a fight with them at the end of the game. So they clearly had like an axe to grind. And even the guy from their team admitted to me, he goes, I went to him before the game, and I didn't think he had enough games played, and I told him. So he knew before the game that this guy would have been ineligible. And then after they lost, he said something. He didn't say something before the game. He only said something after they lost.
What a loser.
I know. I'm going to text him after this. It just reignited my hatred for what happened here.
Loser, man.
But yeah, beer league hockey. It's crazy.
That's wild.
I know, but it's all good. I personally know in my heart that I've won, I think, 7 straight games now. I'm on an absolute heater myself, as are you, apparently. So
we're at 4 in a row right now.
Yeah. At least we know in our hearts that we're solid beer league goalies, and that's all that really matters. But you got to watch out for these pricks out here, man. It's crazy.
We got this Daddy-O's team that's only got 1 L on the season.
Daddy-O's the pizzeria on Hurdle?
Yeah, and they have 40,000 Instagram followers.
That place.
No, not Daddy-O's Pizza.
I know.
Team.
That place. Can I say my opinions on Daddy-O's Pizzeria? It's my neighborhood.
Whatever. Yeah.
That place is a front.
Okay.
For the mob.
I believe it.
So any affiliation with that place is. I hope that doesn't come back to me, but that's what that place is.
All right. I mean, I did not know that before now. So
I'm
Daddy-O's Pizza.
Born and raised in North Buffalo. A lot of Italian friends. I have a friend who lives above Daddy-O's Pizzeria, and I can tell you that confidently. They only take cash. Everything about that place is up front.
Dude,
so you're going up against the mob next week.
Yeah, for the 3rd time.
That's exciting.
Yeah, I mean,
Are they good?
They're a very good team. Yes, they play very well together as a team.
That makes sense. They're family.
Yeah, the funniest thing about it is they have a guy that shows up to like all their games and films. If you go on their page,
I mean,
there's like a video of me getting scored on like twice.
I can tell you that that guy's not getting paid.
No, definitely not. But he He sits down at the opposing goalie's end and just films, and they do like in locker room like highlight reels and shit. Like again, like I've met the guys in the team. Like we got into it our last time we played them. And I'll hold my team accountable. We were being a bunch of dickheads. Not all of us, a small contingent of us were being dickheads. Like I'll have my team's back and I'll hold them accountable if I should have it, I always have their back. But in situations where it's not our fault, I will go to bat for them. But in a situation where we're the dicks, like I'll hold guys accountable. I'll hold them accountable for the last time we played them. But I've met the guys in the parking ramp. They've always been nice to me. I've never had an issue with them. I just prefer not to be on a fucking Instagram page getting scored on a Sunday night at 9:30.
I was gonna say, if there's any team that you don't want to rub the wrong way, it's that one.
Yeah. Right?
So tread lightly. So
but with that being said, I just I'm excited for this weekend. We're gonna be down one of our better skaters, unfortunately. He doesn't think he's be back from Boston in time. I'm actually going to the UFC fight on Saturday. I'm pretty excited for that in Boston.
Oh, that'll be cool.
Work. Yeah.
Quick little analysis. We cover UFC a lot at my job out here. So we've interviewed both Aljamain Sterling and Sean O'Malley this week. We've been covering these guys for years. I remember working back in 2016 when Sean O'Malley knocked out this dude on Dana White's Contender Series, and Snoop Dogg was calling the fight. And there's this viral clip, if anyone hasn't seen it, on YouTube, type in Sean O'Malley, Snoop Dogg. He knocks out this dude. He looks like he's 12 years old, and he's got this afro, stick thin, and Snoop Dogg just goes, O'Malley! O'Malley! He's just screaming O'Malley. It's one of the greatest clips ever. So that's like how he became popular. And then from that point on, he's had a lot of really, really good knockouts. He beat Peter Yan, controversial decision a couple fights ago. And Aljamain Sterling, I actually know personally. I hung out with him at the UFC Apex about a year and a half ago when I was there with the UFC. We were there for work, but we were there watching fights, and nicest guy in the world. He gives us the best interviews. He's one of the best wrestlers, jiu-jitsu, BJJ guys in the world. So it's a really good matchup of a very good striker and a very good grappler. And in my opinion, I think Aljamain's going to win somewhat easily because he's going to get him to the ground, and he's just going to lay on him. He's going to do what Khabib did to Conor essentially back in the day. Yeah. But the only shot O'Malley has is to outstrike him and stay on his feet and knock him out. So it should be an absolutely entertaining fight. I'm actually really excited for this.
I'm super pumped. I guess I've never been to
they're so cool.
I've never been to a UFC event before. So this is definitely kind of like not out of my comfort zone, but like
it's a really good card too. There's a lot of high profile guys. And also the women's title right before, Weili Zhang. She's a beast. She's an absolute beast, and all of her fights are really entertaining, high energy, a lot of strikes. So yeah, that'll be amazing. And also like the energy in Boston, they're obviously putting a guy named O'Malley on the main card. All of the Irish people are going to be supporting him. And
it's going to be nuts. It'd be no different than if like McGregor were fighting in Boston.
And Aljamain's from Long Island, so he's going to have at least some contingent there. I know that. So yeah, the atmosphere is going to be amazing. And honestly, like it has the potential to be incredibly entertaining with O'Malley potentially knocking him out.
Yeah.
Or really boring, but also very impressive if Sterling just lays on him and dominates him the entire time. So yeah, we'll see what happens, but I do think Sterling's going to win by decision.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I mean, O'Malley seems like a very exciting fighter, very personable. Like I like fighters.
Yeah, he's a cool guy too. Like
I like fighters
really good interviews. But yeah, we've talked to Aljamain all throughout the years, and to see like his rise to the level of champion is really cool.
Yeah. So with that being said, before we kick it over to the interview with Billy Jaffe, trying to think. Obviously, some sad news in the world of the NHL this past week. Rodion Amirov with the Toronto Maple Leafs, obviously about a year and a half ago, I believe it was, he was diagnosed with a brain tumor. Just recently this past week, passed away from cancer. So hearts out to the Maple Leafs fan base, and obviously his family. It stinks. 21 years old, first round pick. It doesn't really matter where you're drafted. It just sucks to see a guy whose life tragically ends as early as it did, especially in such a heartbreaking way. So stinks. But hearts go out to that fan base and his friends and family.
Yeah, absolutely. You never want to hear about anything like that. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago that it was initially reported.
Yeah.
And from what I read, he handled the entire process with absolute class and grace, and was extremely positive about the entire thing. He was really fighting. I at least hope that he was getting the best medical care possible. I think he was over in Russia, and you gotta hope that he was getting a level of care that he would have gotten theoretically had he been in Canada or the US. It's just really, really tragic. Anytime a young person, especially a young athlete with so much promise, has to die of something so unfair. So thoughts and prayers to his family, the fan base, everyone else. It's really, really tough news.
It was actually 2022. I thought it was longer ago than that. It's February 2022.
Yeah, year and a half, but you have to imagine there were some really, really tough days in between that diagnosis. Thoughts out to him, and hopefully his legacy will live on.
Yeah, we all know somebody in our lives that has been affected by cancer, whether it's friends, family. It's just, it's a very unforgiving, terrible, terrible disease, and it just sucks to hear news like that. But transitioning out of that unfortunate news, you did bring up before the show that Matthew Fairburn from The Athletic did drop his latest prospect rankings for the Sabres, and some, easy names to know that you would expect to see on there. But we can just rip through those real quick before we could go over to Billy Jaffe.
Yeah. So he released his 1 through 5 initially 2 days ago, and then 6 through 10 today. I think the 1 through 5 is a very intriguing discussion. I think we can start at 5 and then go from there, and maybe list them out and then just figure it out. So 5, he has Noah Ostlund, the first round pick from 2022. He was one of the 3 first round picks of that draft from the Sabres. They selected Matthew Savoie first, Noah Ostlund second, and Isaac Rosine third, correct? Or was it Rosine third or Rosine second and Ostlund third? Either way, I think
it's 1 through 5. Are we talking about 1 through 5?
No. I'm saying from the 2022 first round.
The
order in which they were picked. I think it was
the first round. First rounds. It was Savoie,
I think Ostlund, and then
Kulich. Yeah, Kulich was later on, because I remember people always ask, like, how did this guy fall this deep into the first round?
That's my bad. Rosine was in 2021. Yeah, and
Rosine went the same year as Power.
Right. So that year that the Sabres had 3 first round picks, Ostlund was the second. So coming at number 4, I think was Matthew Savoie, which I think is, you can chime in on if you're surprised by that. I think a lot of people have really high hopes for Matthew Savoie. I think he was the number 9 overall pick. Yeah, 9 overall pick in 2022. That's a pretty high draft slot.
And last year in junior, he had 124 points in 81 games.
So obviously still very young, 19 years old. He is 5'9", 179 pounds, so relatively on the smaller side. But for the 2022 9th overall pick with 120 points in 80 games this past season in the WHL, with a stronger end of the season than beginning of the season. Really, really strong playoffs. For him to be the 4th best prospect, debatably, in the Sabres system, it's not a bad problem to have.
Well, even Matthews suggests it has nothing to do with the player. No, it has to do with the fact that the Sabres prospect pool is so strong.
That's what the discussion is. That's nothing. Yeah. That's saying nothing bad
that's
about
nothing bad about him. No.
Yeah. I think at least like it's interesting because I think it allows him more room for growth. Theoretically, that he doesn't make the Sabres this year and goes back to the WHL. It's just another year for him to develop. People are acting like this dude is a bust. I think that might just be trolls on Twitter. But at the end of the day, he's 19 years old and he's a smaller guy. He has room to improve in both his body and his game, and he can only get better. I think that is the silver lining here with something like that. Coming in at number 3 was Yuri Kulik, and I think he does come in at number 3 because of his performance in the AHL this past season.
He is an absolute menace.
I mean, his 24 goals were second most by an 18-year-old in AHL history. And that's all you need to know.
People don't realize that. It's not like he made, it's not like you're going back kind of like Savoy. He went and scored 124 points in junior at the same age. You know what I mean? Like, he's playing with men in the AHL, true professionals, like guys who, whether they're ranging from the ages of 18 to 30, whatever, you know what I mean? And these are full-grown adults that hit like full-grown pro hockey players. So to score 24 goals as an 18-year-old and just the way he was scoring those goals, again, guy performed so well, and we've all kind of said it. He's the choice to replace Olofsson when that day does come at a much cheaper price tag. But guy has a lethal shot and just sees the ice so well.
He's also 19 years old.
Yes.
He is a little bit bigger. He's 5'11", 170 pounds, so a little bit skinnier than Savoy is. But he seems like his game, when he fell to 28, I think everybody was surprised because his game felt pro-ready, especially from the perspective that he had an NHL-level shot. I think the other aspects of his game were his skating and his physicality that he needed to round out a little bit. And he probably still does. He had a pretty good playoffs. It wasn't as good as his regular season, but I think everything about him screams upside, and it also screams putting him on the taxi squad and getting him up to the NHL, potentially with the first injury. Like, he might be the first call-up for the Sabres this season, if not making the roster directly out of camp. So We'll see what happens with that, but putting him at number 3 in these rankings ahead of Savoy, I guess there's potentially a debate there. Feels right, just based upon how he produced in the AHL this past season. Mm-hmm. Number 2, a name not too many people have heard about, Devin Levi.
Who's that guy?
Yeah, who's he? Still crazy to think that he's a prospect.
Right?
I was surprised to see him on the list.
I honestly, without looking at it before I just opened it as we started talking about it, because I kind of wanted to have my reaction be live to that list. I was surprised that he was on it too, because he's going to be on the team next year. He's the only player on this list that will probably start on the team next year.
Yeah, I would say so. I would definitely say so. I think he's still on it because, number 1, of his age, number 2, he only played 7 games. So he still is considered a rookie. The guys who graduated from the year previous were Owen Power, Jack Quinn, JJ Peterka, and Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. Mm-hmm. So guys that played a significant amount of games in the NHL last season. And if you're playing in the NHL, you're no longer a prospect. I think obviously we have a teaser of what Devin Levi can do based upon those last 7 games and the spot where they needed him. But that's what the synopsis in this article is about. Mm-hmm. The team was confident in him in those pressure pack games down the stretch. He reinvigorated the locker room with the types of things he was doing. The one video that Fairburn put in that post was his save against Nico Hischier in the Devils game. Arguably his best save from his first 7 games, in my opinion. Yeah. His lateral quickness and his anticipation and his tracking of the puck and his athleticism. If you go to the post and watch that video, if you don't remember the save, it shows you every single ounce of ceiling that Devin Levi has as a goalie. Yeah. He saw that play develop before it happened, and it's not like it was lucky. He got over there and he was there before the puck got there, snatched it, windmill, split, everything you want in a goalie. A little bit of flash, a little bit of cockiness. He sure couldn't believe it. I think of the 7 games, that was probably his second worst. I think the Sabres lost 6-2 maybe, or even maybe it was 4-2, 5-2. Either way, the Devils game wasn't his best game, but that was also the second game on a back-to-back after the Rangers shootout win. And it was
he played 6 in a row.
Yeah.
That stretch of games too, which
– and it was even like slightly surprising that he started that game. We all wanted him to, of course, but at the end of the day, like he didn't play badly. The team just didn't play well in front of him.
Exactly. Like piggybacking everything you said about his game, his feet. They're so calm yet chaotic at the same time. If you're a goalie and you watch Devin Levi's feet as he, how aggressive he gets out of his paint and how he tracks the puck, obviously, his puck tracking is superb, but just watch his feet. I remember like watching his Beanpot shootout when was it against Boston? The shootout?
Harvard.
How aggressive he got out. And just his depth control, and you just watch his feet, how calm yet chaotic they can be. And just, he never gets himself caught too far out of his net. He never backs in too quickly to give a shooter advantage. He's really, and he even said it on our podcast, like he doesn't believe in the size thing. It's just all about, your mechanics and just knowing where you are in your net, how to be aggressive, how to control your depth. Like just the way he broke it down. I wish I could just quote him verbatim. Go back and talk about it. The guy is just literally just everything is advertised.
Yeah.
And we'll get to number 1 here on this list, but I really think if you're gonna include Devin Levi on this list, number 1 and number 2 could have been pretty interchangeable.
Yeah. I personally think that given that Levi's on the list, I think he should have been number 1, given what he's going to be for the team this season. But I also think it's potentially says even more about number 1, which I'll get to in a second. Just one more thing on his feet. The Coronado shootout save that he had to win the Beanpot, I thought was very similar to the save he had against Patrick Kane in the Rangers shootout. And I remember going back to the replay from the other end of the ice, or it was like the zoomed in version from the middle ice camera, where it zoomed in on his like 5 or 6 very quick shuffles as he's going from right to left.
Yep.
The ability to do that very quickly, also stay balanced and in position, is uncanny. I try to work on my shuffles and T-pushes. This is really getting into the nitty-gritty of goalie here. If you know what C-cuts, shuffles, and T-pushes are, you are a goalie. But in layman's terms, it's moving across your crease in an efficient but also very, very steady way, and not getting off balance and staying square to the shooter and doing it in a way where you're still challenging the shooter, but you're tracking the puck at the same time. It's a very difficult thing to do, and the depth control and the balance and everything about it is not easy. I've always said that size shouldn't be a factor for goalies either. It's a real shame that goalies under 5'11" aren't considered for top programs or juniors or anything else just automatically. Like, a goalie should be considered how they play the game. Mm-hmm. And if their numbers are as good as a guy who's 6'4", but he's 5 inches shorter, who gives a shit? I'm just not as good as Devin Levi. Nobody else is for that size. But he's just a remarkably good goalie. His reflexes, his athleticism, everything about him, like we talked about last podcast, like it reminds me of UC Saros. It reminds me of Marc-Andre Fleury. It reminds me of
I would say him and say Johnny Quick in terms of size.
The athleticism and everything else about it. Like, when you are that size, you need those reflexes. You need that flexibility. You need everything about that to get across your crease a little bit quicker than Andrei Vasilevsky, who's 6'7". So I think we've belabored the point about how excited we are about him, but just from a pure technical standpoint, that save on Nico Hischier, the Patrick Kane shootout save, and the save at Boston University in the Beanpot, 3 great examples of what to be excited for Devin Levi moving forward.
Mm-hmm. So we get to number 1, and it's not hard to guess. Zach Benson, this year's first round pick. I believe it was it 8?
It was 13.
13. I'm sorry, 13.
I mean, the fact that it was 13 is insane.
Yeah, the fact he was projected to be a top like 5 or 6 pick originally, and teams were kind of. Man, it just goes to the strength of this draft class, and you see Michev how far he is it Michev?
Yeah, Mate Michkov.
Mate Michkov, yeah. Sorry, how far he dropped because of obviously the rumors that he, how difficult he'd be to come over play in the NHL, much like most Russian players, who do play in the KHL. He eventually fell to Philly, and I think that really helped, shake up the rest of the draft board, sort of players fall, where they should have. Maybe again, Benson should have been easily a top 10 pick.
And he probably wasn't because of his size.
Yes, exactly. Teams are afraid to draft because of size, and it just drives me nuts. Because look at Cole Caulfield. Cole Caulfield is going to be an absolute stud in this league at some point in his career.
Yeah,
led by none other than
look at Braden Point.
Yep, Caulfield led by one of the original small guys, Martin St. Louis, over in Montreal. So
and Cole Caulfield's bread and butter is his shot.
Yep.
Zach Benson's bread and butter is his compete level and his playmaking ability. I think one guy on Twitter right after the Sabres drafted him says that he's tracked every NHL draft prospect for the past 10 years, and the only person that graded higher in terms of expected goals and assists from playmaking ability, I think it was expected assists, basically playmaking ability in the past 10 years, NHL draft prospects, Connor McDavid.
What was McDavid? Oh, I thought you were talking about from this past trip.
No. In the past 10 years of NHL draft prospects, the only person who had a higher expected assists or best plays available on the ice from what he did for the amount of plays that he tracked, which is a lot, was Connor McDavid.
Yeah.
That tells you everything you need to know. Connor McDavid is likely going to go down as the best player in NHL history.
I think
so.
Personally, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different game. Wayne Gretzky's Wayne Gretzky, Bobby Orr's Bobby Orr, but in the current NHL, it's Connor McDavid, and it will be for the rest of the time.
Yep.
So that says everything you need to know about Zach Benson. Watch his highlights, his compete level. The best way I would describe him is a pest. He back checks and back pressures in the neutral zone, unlike any forward I've ever seen. He picks people off from behind in a way that's like really annoying. But if he's on your team, you love the guy. Like his defense, from like an NBA comparison, like I think of him as like a Patrick Beverley. Like he's going to be in your face the entire game. His compete level and his try hard and everything about him plays like a guy who's 6'4", and he can battle you for any single puck on the board. And then his ability to distribute to his teammates and also score goals is also elite and next level. So when you combine all of that, it turns into a complete player that's going to play in the NHL for 10 to 15 years.
In terms of after Yuri Kulik, I think Zach Benson's the most intriguing and exciting prospect the Buffalo Sabres have right now.
I think if he comes into camp and wows as much as we think he could, it's not out of the question that he could be on the team.
And Ryan Johnson's probably in the 6 for 10. Again, we won't get to that because we had to kick it over to Billy Jaffe's interview that I did with him 2 days ago. Ryan Johnson's another intriguing defensive prospect that, finally Buffalo was able to sign to this ELC earlier this offseason. There's a lot of names,
Wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to put Ryan Johnson on the third pair with Eric Johnson.
That'd be a lot of fun. Johnson connection.
Johnson and Johnson, the young guy and the old guy, nurture him, a left-handed defenseman with a right-handed defenseman, a stay-at-home guy with a playmaking guy. I wouldn't hate it, especially if you find a trade for Yoki Haru or Lyubushkin or Stillman or any one of these guys. Someone's got to go, right?
Yep.
So get a young guy in there, make the ceiling a lot higher, and then you see what happens. But, yeah, I think long story short, the Sabres prospect pipeline is absolutely loaded. The future is insanely bright.
Yep.
And I think you were talking about it earlier, like a lot of people are excited for Bill's season. I'm not that excited for the regular season just because this team is way past the point of expectations. The only thing that matters for the Bills right now is the playoffs.
Yeah.
And anything less than a Super Bowl appearance this season is a disappointment.
Yeah.
So,
it's Super Bowl or bust right now.
And not even winning the Super.
Just get there.
I would argue
anything could happen once you get there, man.
I know. I would argue winning it, anything but winning it, is a disappointment. But I think every Bills fan would be happy if they just got to the Super Bowl in Las Vegas this season. If they lost another one, you lose the game. Who cares? What's another Super Bowl loss? We can handle that.
And Eli Manning's proven that if you get there, anything can happen.
Yeah.
Nick Foles as well.
I am, and also like the AFC is going to be better than the NFC this year. I think the Bills would be favored over any single NFC opponent they could come against.
Agreed.
Unless the 49ers or the Eagles had an insane season. I really don't believe they would be underdogs. Long story short, I'm way more excited for this Buffalo Sabres regular season.
Oh my.
Right there, that opening night game against the Rangers with Devin Levi in net. Every single division game is going to matter because you know that this team is going to be in the mix. Hopefully we get better injury luck. Jack Quinn comes back soon. I'm so much more excited for the start of the Sabres regular season than I am for the Bills. So we'll see what happens, but this is going to be a really, really fun season.
And with that being said, we're going to kick it over to Billy Jaffe, who I interviewed 2 days ago. Hold on. Oh, one more time? We're going to watch my tape one more time?
You know what? Unfortunately, my live barn is horrible quality, and when you go back and like try to find a save, like I'm gonna attempt to figure it out next time I make one. Maybe make the quality better somehow, but I'm gonna get you back on this one. You're not gonna one up me with that. I've got some pad saves across the net recently that I think are arguably just as good.
Are they windmills? Are they two pad jammers?
I mean, like not necessarily as flashy, but in terms of like the level of difficulty, I think right up there.
All right. Well, without further ado, we will finally kick it over to Billy Jaffe from NESN and better known from his podcast. And sorry, again, the name I'm subscribed to, which is embarrassing. His podcast with NESN, Morning Brew with Jaffe and Raycroft, or Razor. Sorry, yeah, Morning Brew with Jaffe and Razor. So without further ado, we'll kick it over to them. Thanks for hopping on with us tonight, boys and ladies, girls, everybody. Thanks for hopping on. I totally butchered that transition. Sorry, guys.
People.
We
don't assume gender. We don't assume gender on this podcast.
No, men, women, children. Gotta hope children are watching this. But anyways, without further ado, Billy Jaffe, appreciate you coming on. And here is our interview with him earlier this week. We'll talk to you later. Welcome, everybody, to episode 135 of Two Goalies, One Mic, brought to you by Outlet Liquor, the place to buy a case over on George Urban Boulevard. Tell them the boys from Two Goalies, One Mic sent you. I am joined today by none other reoccurring guest, Billy Jaffe from NESN Network, covers the Bruins over there in Boston. Billy, thanks for popping on with us, bud.
Always a pleasure. Glad we can make it work.
Absolutely. A lot kind of going on in Boston.
Yeah.
Listen, last year, everybody, I wouldn't say everybody, but a lot of people kind of picked the Bruins to be the one team that would kind of maybe fall out of the playoff picture.
Mm-hmm.
And then they went on to have the greatest season in NHL history. Nobody, no betting man saw that coming. You had Linus Ullmark have a Vezina season in that former Buffalo Sabre, begrudgingly. You had so many guys step up. Bergeron was Bergeron. And just you kind of went all in at the deadline. And obviously things didn't go the way you obviously would have wanted in the playoffs, but you still had a very, very, very unforgettable season. This season, could this be the year this season that people predicted last year?
Yeah, sure. I guess it could because, even though the Bruins have pretty good players still, they don't have the depth that they had before. There's no question about that. You don't know what kind of injuries they're going to face. That could impact the depth even more. Is a player, you mentioned Lena Solmark. Is Lena Solmark going to have a similar type performance here? Well, we don't know yet. I do think that the depth is going to get challenged at times. They've made some interesting acquisitions. The Kevin Shattenkirks, James Van Riemsdyk, Morgan Geekie. Does he have the upside that he thinks he does and that some people do, in the analytics community do? I don't know yet. I'm not sure. So is this a year that they don't shine? Well, I don't know. I still think they're pretty good. I still think
so too.
135 points last year in an unforgettable year, as you mentioned. But let's just say if they were to earn 40 points less, okay, 40 fewer points, that would still put them in a playoff position. Now, they might be in that 7 through 9 spot, right? Battling for 8. But that's 40 points. So that means they would lose 20 more games, which, that would be an awful lot. I'm trying to be logical looking at it. I still think they're good enough to make a playoff run, but I do understand that if this is the team that they go to battle with, so to speak, in a month or so, month and a half, that there will be challenges for this team because they've lost an awful lot off their roster from last season.
And it's not even just, that you lost a lot. It's who you lost.
Right.
Bergeron still had a great year last season. Like, he had his age, and I don't even know if, as long as you take care of your body, I know he had some injury issues early in his career. As long as you take care of your body, you could play into your late 30s. Look at Alex Ovechkin right now. The guy has stayed relatively healthy his entire season. Realistically, he would probably break Gretzky's record this year had it not been for lockout and COVID shortened seasons. But Bergeron at his age still had a phenomenal season, and it's not even just offensively what he does. He is one of the most complete 200-foot hockey players the game has ever seen. You lose a guy like that.
But now, okay, so you lose Bergeron, you lose Krejci. Those are both had 8 points, give or take. I don't remember exactly, but they're also Bergeron dominant in the faceoff circle, one of your top penalty killers. Krejci, one of your top power play guys too. Another good faceoff guy. So you're losing these little things that add up. Who's the guy that's going to go on the ice first for a D zone faceoff in a major situation? It's Bergeron. He's going to go out there. So you lose those players, and then the additions that you made in Orlov and Hathaway. They're gone. Bertuzzi, he brought some swagger, some flair.
You guys,
so you lose that. Okay, but they were only there for 2 months, those guys. But now you lose a guy like Connor Clifton, who good for Connor. Cliffy, goes to Buffalo, as gets a contract that he couldn't get with the Bruins due to salary cap restraints.
Yep.
Good for him. He's a depth defenseman. But you need those guys. So a lot, and he's physical. So you lose an awful lot of players that had significant roles with this team.
Yeah, and we'll get into Clifton here in a few minutes because I definitely want more of your insight on him. He's been playing a much bigger role in Buffalo than he probably did in Boston. But depth, I think that's where you're going to be lacking the most next year. You mentioned those names that you lose. Top of list again, Bergeron, Krejci, Orlov. Again, when you guys got Bertuzzi, I'm like, find a guy more fit for his city than Bertuzzi. Like, style of hockey he plays. Like, it's just, I'm sure Bruins fans, I know Bruins fans were through the roof when that deal was announced. And I was, I'm like, Grant, I'm a Sabres fan. I didn't want you to re-sign him, but that's a guy that is very difficult to play against. He has offense. He's almost, I don't want to make the comparison to this player, but he's almost like a poor man's Matthew Tkachuk. He's not going to get you the points. He's not the skill level, but he can score, he can produce, and he's going to make you think twice when you go into a corner or go to the front of the net.
Yeah, and he's willing to go to the front. That's a big deal too, right? And he seems to be. I'll tell you what he was that we didn't realize. He's a much better passer than any of us realized too. He was really excellent at that. But he's got I don't know, he's got grit. I don't know about snarl, but he's got grit to his game. And he brought him, he brought his game up. And again, he had to test the market. He should have, because that's what you do when you've earned it. I think his agent overread the market, I think, or underread maybe is the better term.
Yep.
Or overestimated the market. But now he's in a place where maybe with the salary cap going up after next season, and maybe they'll have a major type of season in Toronto that he could set himself up. But it's just a 1-year deal. But I get it. But yeah, he was an important player. We all thought it was a great addition. You got to give Don Sweeney a lot of credit. He went out and did what his team needed him to do, and then obviously they didn't come through for him or them in the playoffs. But it's the old "that's why they play the game" type thing, and that's why playoff hockey is so amazingly
unpredictable.
But also it's just this. It's almost like a narcotic. It really is. That's why it is. It's so freaking addictive because of things like that happen. It pains me to say it, being involved with the Bruins as much as I am, but that's what makes playoff hockey so addictive to watch, is the uncertainty of it.
You mentioned bringing in Geeky. Played past 2 years with Seattle. Obviously, he's not going to be a guy that's to be expected to fill Bergeron's shoes, but in the inaugural season with Seattle, he was a -16, 22 points, but had definitely a much better season this year. Roughly the same amount of games, 28 points, but he was a +14. I know plus minus doesn't tell you the entire story about a player, but it is a stat that you should pay attention to. Where does he fit into this lineup? Because again, you lose that number one center in Bergeron. How do you fill his shoes?
Well, if you don't go out and make a deal between now and the beginning of the regular season, and the most logical on paper or on a podcast to talk about and playing armchair GM is Elias Lindholm of Calgary. Last year of his contract, and then you'd sign him to a bigger, deal. You can't trade for him unless you have a deal in place, though. Before that, you can't take that chance. Do the Bruins have enough to get him? Rhetorically asking, I'm not sure they do. I'm not sure if they do, but that would be the best way to replace a guy like Bergeron with a Bergeron-like player.
Yep.
And Lindholm, who's in his prime and would probably be set up for another 5-6 years to be, so to speak, in his prime. Otherwise, you go with Pavel Zacha and Charlie Coyle, and then you start saying, okay, who else do we have? Now, Morgan Geekie is a player that can play center, but I also think that they're looking at him to play right wing, Duane. I do. I think that they're
that idea. I think he played some on the right side this past season. Yeah.
Yeah, he did more. And is his upside what some people analytically speaking suggest it could be? I respect analytics. I don't know about them though all the time. And therefore I need to see a player 20 games. And I'll tell you what I really think. Now, I've seen Geekie play from afar, but now I get to see Morgan Geekie play up close. And then I'll have a much better take, at least my take on it.
Trust me, I'm right there with you on analytics. Like, I understand it's an important thing to have in your organization, those people that pay as much attention as they do, but it never tells you the entire story.
Well, you mentioned plus minus, okay? And I don't need to get off on it too much here. But 2 years ago, the Seattle Kraken goalies were awful. Awful. Yep. Now their defense was but their goaltending was awful. Much better this year. The team was better, deeper. They played a little bit different style. It was go. They play a very what I almost call unique. I mean, their fourth line got an awful lot of opportunity because they felt like 1 through 4 were almost the exact same, and we're just going to go. Very different than some other teams out there. But their goaltenders were good. Even a guy like Marty Jones for a while was really good. Really good. And it was, Grubauer the first year was, oh my God, you kidding me?
Yep.
So I think that played a big difference into the plus minus for some of these guys. So let's let's see what a guy like Geekie brings. The Bruins do need some help, especially on the right side. Remember, Jabrusk, a lefty playing the off wing, right? Not that he likes it, but could you put him back to his natural side if a guy like Geekie can play the right? I think those are some of the things they need to work through. I'm not going to get into the depth guys from the American League, but the Bruins have 2 or 3 guys that they'll look at to try and play parts of that third, fourth line. But I think a guy like Morgan Geekie will get a good chance. But I do think that it might be at wing first before center.
I couldn't agree with you more. Pavel Zacha, I think he's the guy that's gonna be first up to try and fill in for what Bergeron. I think you're gonna be driving a lot of your offense from your wings now, especially with Pasta. You're gonna have to, I think. But Pasta's the type of player that makes everyone around him better, even if he's not playing up the middle. He's just that talented, and one of the best goal scorers in the world. And
but you need to get him the puck.
Exactly.
You need to get him in puck, and that's where the center distribution is key.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that they're going to have to, as you mentioned, drive offense from the wings. Marchand, he's still got a lot left. And remember, last year was his first year back with the hip stuff, and they say just like knee operations, those hip injuries that he had take a full year. So let's see where he's at. So he could drive a lot of offense too. But you bring up Pavel Zacha, and I mean, I loved watching him play. But
good player.
He's a great player. But again, he played a lawful. I don't have the exact amount of games. He played a fair amount on the wing again, though, until he did get moved to center at times. Center's his natural position from his younger days, but he played a lot of wing with New Jersey too. What is he as a center? I don't know. We're going to wait and see. Can he handle top line minutes? We're going to find out, because I do think that he's going to have to, if this is the Bruins roster, then he's the natural fit as what we will call the number 1 center. Not sure yet if he is. I mean, Charlie Coyle can play up, but Charlie Coyle is best served as a beast of a number 3 center that plays significant minutes, even strength, penalty kill, and then at certain kill times. I don't mean PK time. I mean end of period, important face-off, etc. A lot of times Charlie Coyle, with even these other centers here, would get more ice time on average because of the situations where he'd be out there. But I still think when it's all said and done, he's best as a 3C. But he probably elevates to a 2 slot this year if this is their lineup, and that means Zacha gets anointed, so to speak, number 1.
Is Marchand the next captain?
I think so. I do. He only has a year left on his deal, but I got to imagine
he's a Bruin for life.
He's got to be. Like, I was talking to somebody before. Look, this is up to Brad. Maybe he takes a look to see where is the team, what direction is it heading. Do I want another shot at a Stanley Cup if the Bruins, if he deems, aren't there? I don't know all that. We don't know all this. So, he's going to be 35 when this deal's done. He still has, I think, some time left to produce. But I think that they give him the C, and I hope that he's, let's say I'm going to make it up, another 2-year deal after this. And then you go year by year after that, and you see where he's at. After Brad, there's definitely David Pastrnak and Charlie McAvoy to consider as leaders of this team. McAvoy is he's been learning. He's a very astute player.
I love watching him play.
Yeah. He's been learning over the years from guys like Zdeno Chara, Patrice Bergeron.
Such a fluid skater.
Yeah. Very powerful in that regard. And he's young, and he's locked up. He's starting his mega extension starting this year.
Yep. 2 less. I know we got to let you go here, but one name I can't believe hasn't been brought up yet, Milan Lucic. What is that doing for the fan base, and where does he fit in?
Well, for the fan base, I think they're very, very thrilled. I think it's a warm hug, so to speak, to have the guy they love calling Luch back in. I don't think the expectations are going to be out of the. I don't think they're going to be extraordinary, and I mean, people understand where he's at in his career.
Yeah,
and I don't think they're going to be unrealistic. Maybe that's the term. I think he's going to be energized or re-energized being back here in Boston. I know how important the city was to him and how important he was to the Spoke Bee playing here. Can you get 10, 12 goals out of him, Duane? I mean, can you get that? And
I guarantee he scores opening night and that place loses its mind.
Well, if that happens, I mean, holy shit.
Money.
Yeah, that place goes nuts. And, now with Toronto bringing in Ryan Reeves, I mean, these are two battleships, man. These are both deterrents.
Real heavies.
Well, last of the heavies, right? I mean, there's
True.
maybe a couple of others, maybe legit heavies out there.
McDermott and a few other guys, but I mean, there's nothing.
Nothing like Nothing like these guys.
They're near the top of the list,
right? And so, is this? Are they going to be able to go at each other the 4 or 5 times they play? I don't know, but those are the expectations that Luch will bring. His passion for the city, his passion for the sweater, his intensity. Can he bring it? Can he have a dozen great games, right? And that's what you get out of him. And then otherwise he's a 4th line role player, which is important. But losing Bergeron and Krejci to retirement, you need leadership.
You need a voice in that room.
And now you get that from him, and it's instant cred. And so I think in that regard, it's great. Now the Bruins brought in Shattenkirk, who's a vet, and Van Riemsdyk, who's a vet, but they don't carry history with the Bruins organization with them.
They don't carry the same weight.
Right. So that's where it is. And the fans are very happy. And I think that, he fits in on the 4th line left wing. And I'm looking forward to watching him, be back in the Spoke Bee. I don't know. Let's see how he can bring it, but I'm excited to see him back.
I'm excited to see what he brings to the team. It'd be fun when they play the Sabres for sure. Connor Clifton, we brought him up to start. We'll talk about this. I'll let you go. Going to play a much bigger role in Buffalo. Obviously, you got to see him play every single game.
Yep.
He's the role right now is him and Eric Johnson, the two big signings, I guess. Eric Johnson's probably got 1 year left in his career, and a good veteran. He brings a ring to the room. But
great guy. He's a great guy too. He's a wonderful speaker, Eric Johnson. I'm a big fan of his. Big fan. He's probably a 3rd pair guy there though. Yep. But yes, I'm with
Connor is probably going to slot in right next to Owen Power. They were looking for that guy to play opposite of him. We thought it was going to be Yoki Haru. He was never. Owen Power was never playing consistently with the same defenseman like Dahlin. It was with Samuelson. Dahlin, who's probably going to get again the big heavy max deal. Same thing with Owen Power. They're looking to extend him for 8 seasons. Where do you see how well do you see him fitting in with Buffalo? This young, energized team. Some even called them one of the more exciting teams to watch last season. Finally, especially after losing Boston native Jack Eichel in that deal with Vegas. They bring in Alex Tuck. They bring in Peyton Krebs. They bring in a couple picks. How well do you see him fitting in, and what does he have to offer? What's the best attribute of his game does he offer Buffalo?
Well, he's got swagger. There was a term used for him called Cliffy hockey, which became almost Jim Montgomery, to his credit, after about halfway through the year, said, we don't want to use Cliffy hockey anymore, because Cliffy hockey had the connotation that almost a bit of a wild stallion in him, where there were times that it was like, oh my God, look at that, that wasn't crazy, but almost on the precipice of being a little out of control, but unpredictable. Mm-hmm. But at other times, and that was great, other times it would hurt Cliffy. And so they called it Cliffy hockey, meaning, that's Cliffy hockey. And Montgomery said, and I'm paraphrasing here, like, no more of that. Like, that's almost a negative. This is Connor Clifton here. And when Connor Clifton's at his best, though, is when he doesn't cross the line. And I don't mean cross the line as in something dirty, because he's very physical for a kid. He's not that big, but he hits ferociously for a smaller guy. And he's fearless in that regard. He's got a lot of wonderful, as I said, swagger to it. But at times he would look to go too big. At times he would maybe try and do a little too much and maybe run out of position a little here and there. I think the old less is more is huge for Connor Clifton. I do think, knowing that he signed a nice contract, which, by the way, he earned. He wasn't underpaid for the last few years, but because the Bruins took a chance on him and he was producing, but they said, look, we'll give you $1 million a year. We'll give you a guarantee for, what was it, 3-4 years, but this is what we can offer you. And he jumped on it. Now he's like, look, I've earned this more money. And one thing I'm going to question or wonder is, he's going to see higher level competition playing with a guy like Power, or if he ends up playing with Dahlin, then perhaps he did as a third pair guy with the Bruins behind McAvoy and Carlo. So how does that play out in the end? We'll have to wait and see. He's going to be playing with a really great, big, young, dynamic defenseman. Again, whether it's Power, who we think it's going to be, or Dahlin, probably not. But either way, he's going to see tough competition. And I believe, if I remember correctly, this year was his career high in average time on ice, about 17:45 or so in there. So he may, can he sustain 19 minutes a game? That responsibility that comes.
Yep.
We'll see. I'm rooting for him. I think he's got a great way about him. I'm a big fan of his, and I hope he does really well. I do.
I love it that he's willing to hit anything that moves, and
loves it. Yeah.
He playing only 16, 17 minutes a night last year. He's going to be, but it's probably like a roughly 2.5-3 minute bump. I would expect, possibly a career high in points, especially playing with a guy like Power 5-on-5, a dynamic player. And, obviously this young Sabres team, again, you got guys like Tate. Who are you most excited about? Not you be excited about any player on the Sabres, but what is your opinion of that roster? Like somebody asked me to ask you, would you swap the Bruins roster with Buffalo's right now? I mean, not that you should answer that question, but a lot of teams,
you know what? There's a lot of unproven still with the Sabres. And while it was a nice story last year, they still hiccuped down the end. I know they only finished a point or two eventually out of the playoffs.
Yeah, 1 point.
But there was a stretch in March where they couldn't get they didn't do well again. They kind of they had a few games where you're like, oh, they got to win that game, and they didn't.
Every year in March.
Every year, right. So this to me is, while it's an exciting young roster, still unproven. The kid that interests me a ton is Dylan Cousins. I mean, does he become that kind of second line guy that, like a David Krejci, that really completes your team? And next thing you know, you're like, holy shit, how did he get 80 points this year? How did he do that? And so, as much as, it's hard not to love Tage Thompson. Tage Thompson's going to have to step up even more. All eyes on him. He's gonna, if this team's going to be successful, he has to. You've got the defensive base there of Dahlin and Power. But again, to me, believe it or not, Duane, I still think they're unproven. Can they handle the wherewithal, the playoff March type wherewithal when it's all set up? We still don't know.
We don't know because they've never seen it.
Right. And lastly, the big thing is goal. I mean, it's pretty obvious what's going to happen, whether it's Devin Levi, is it Comrie? Do they do something else? I don't know. I don't know when it's all said and done. I mean, I saw Levi play an awful lot in college.
Eastern, yep.
And I love his attitude. I love how confident he is. But when it's all said and done, look, he couldn't have asked for a better debut in the NHL, a few games and stuff. But, I don't remember how many games he played. But, 8 games at the end of 1 year is a lot different than 42 in a full season.
He played 6 in a row and the most important games of the season. And he definitely stepped up and he gave them
awesome.
Gave him the chance. Dylan Cousins, I would say he reminds me, you might agree, more skilled version of Michael Pekka. I love watching.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, I can see it. I think that watching him more like this past season, I found it just intriguing how young he is, how mature I thought at times his game was. Again, confident. So those are the players that excite me. I mean, it's hard not to get excited about a lot of the players that Buffalo has, but I'll keep repeating myself.
Unproven.
They're unproven. They are.
I agree to an extent. This is a make or break year. A lot of people expect playoffs. Billy, thanks for hopping on, man. I know you stuck it out with me for a few extra minutes. I really do appreciate it. Guys, go check him out on NESN Network. One of the best Boston has to offer. And
if you want a great Bruins podcast like yours on the Sabres, Morning Brew, BRU, with Jaffe and Razor. Ray Croft.
I am a subscriber. I do check it out whenever I can, especially
Thanks,
at
buddy.
work. It's an easy listen at work. So,
Appreciate it.
guys, this is been episode 135 of Two Goalies, One Mic. We will be right back with you in a few moments, where I'll be joined by my normal co-host Connor Hurls. Couldn't make it onto the interview with Billy. Billy, again, thanks for copping on, and we'll talk to you later, bud.
See you later. Appreciate it. Take care.